There's another interesting prophecy that I believe requires this kind of technology for us to be able to relate to that. And it's in Ezekiel chapter 39. You know, as I studied in the past Ezekiel chapter 39, I always wondered why God gave such a detailed description of the burial of the army that Gog from the uttermost north, which is really Russia, and the allies, the surrounding Muslim nations that go in confederacy with him. Why God uses so much time and so many words to describe how they're buried. Who cares? You just say they're going to be buried. But listen to what he says in Ezekiel chapter 39, where he says, "On that day I will give Gog a burial ground there in Israel, the valley of those who pass by the east of the sea." Now this is east of the Dead Sea, which is Jordan today, and it will be blocked off to those who pass by. In other words, it's going to be a quarantined burial place. And then he says, "So they will bury Gog there with all his horde, and they will call it the valley of Hamon Gog. For 7 months the house of Israel will bury them in order to cleanse the land. Even all the people of the land will bury them, and it will be their renown on that day that I will glorify myself, declares the Lord God. They will set apart men who will constantly pass through the land." Now notice, this is a selected special group that pass through the land. Now many people think, well, this is just because of the ceremonial nature of what is being done. But I believe it's also a technical reason. Certain specialists will be chosen to go through the land, and they will do nothing but collect the remains of the armies that came from Gog or Russia and the particular Muslim armies of the nations that attack Israel in the last days. And it says, "They will set apart men who will constantly pass through the land, burying those who are passing through, even those left on the surface of the ground, in order to cleanse it. At the end of 7 months they will make a search. As those who pass through the land pass through, and anyone sees a man's bone, then he will set up a marker by it until the buriers have buried it in the valley of Hamon Gog." Now notice, the special service of buriers, the special persons, are still set apart. And if a person sees a remains of any kind, a bone or whatever, of this army that fought there, they're not to touch it. They're to put a marker by it and let the professional buriers come there. And then it says, "And even the name of the city will be Hamonah, so they will cleanse the land." Now, I think about this for a moment. They're going to have special buriers in a quarantine burial grounds, and no one is to touch any remains of this army, but only to inform and mark where it is to the professional buriers. You know, I was over in Israel in the late 1970s with a group making a film about Ezekiel 38 and 39, and one of the persons that were helping us had been a former executive officer on a nuclear submarine. And as we were studying this and talking about it, he said, "This is exactly the kind of instruction that we got for handling radioactive body parts." And I believe that's what's going to happen. There are many other prophecies that talk about the tremendous destruction that's going to take place to this army that invades Israel. Apparently God's going to supernaturally protect those who are believers in that day. But the ones that are destroyed are going to be so contaminated, apparently, with radioactivity that they place them in this special burial place, and it's blocked off, quarantine. No one's to go in there but the ones in special protective suits. Those are the sort of things that are reflected in these prophecies. Now let's look at something else.